If that makes sense, I think I remember the people I worked with on movies more than the movies themselves. No matter what, Hollywood star Sam Elliott has never held back. He's finally telling the names of the 6 stars he couldn't stand working with now that he's 80 years old. Sam has been in a lot of memorable parts over the years and is known for his gruff voice and cowboy charm, but behind the scenes, not all of his co-stars won his respect. He's telling the truth about what really happened, from big egos to outright rudeness. Who or what made Sam's list of people to avoid? The answers are incredibly honest and shocking. 6th place goes to Jane Campion. Drama is great in Hollywood, but it doesn't happen behind the scenes very often like it did when Sam Elliott, with his gruff voice and cowboy look, insulted renowned director Jane Campion. The Spark and the Power of the Dog, the movie that won her an Oscar. The event happened when Elliott was on the popular podcast WTF with comic Mark Moron. People know Elliott as the face of the Western genre, and when they talked about Campion's movie, he didn't hold back. He said, "All these guys are walking around in chaps and no shirts. And all of these damn hints at being gay throughout the whole damn movie." There was more to it than a passing statement. It was a sharp criticism that was heard all over Hollywood and the world. Campion's movie, which is about the harsh facts of being a man and repressed desire in Montana in the 1920s, clearly hit a nerve. But for Elliott, it wasn't the praise from critics or the risky subject matter that bothered him. He thought it didn't smell like the real West. I mean, what the hell does this woman know about the American West? I mean, she's a great director, I love her earlier work, but what the hell does she know? She's from New Zealand, and that was the worst of it. The West is more than just a background for Elliott, who has made a name for himself in dirty boots and wide-brimmed hats. A holy place, a way of life, and a code. Even though it got good reviews, The Power of the Dog felt like an overly polished outsider's view of a life he's lived through scripts, spurs, and horse sores. It wasn't just that his words were controversial. That was a very personal thing. They showed a man who is very protective of a world that he thinks is being changed artistically without the muddy boots and quiet pain that make it real to him. No matter what, Jane Campion never backs down. A few days later at the Directors Guild of America Awards, she gave a sharp and apologize-free answer. What do I say? There was an interview with her where she just shrugged. He meant well, but he's not really a cowboy. He plays roles. The West is a made-up place. The range has a lot of space. That answer wasn't just funny. There was a philosophical jab in it. Campion wasn't just standing up for her movie. She was protesting against strict rules that were putting up walls around the Western genre. The word she sent was that the West doesn't belong to any one gender, country, or person. It's not just dust and fights. It's about people, power, silence, and control. Then she made a more serious accusation. Elliott's anger might not just be about the setting or the story. I believe that what he said is a little sexist. Campion said, "You look at all the great westerns made in Spain by Sergio Leone. No one questions his connection to the genre, but when it's me, a woman from New Zealand, suddenly I don't belong." It was a good point. Films set in the West have been shot outside of the US for a long time. Campion said that stories, not location or gender, were what counted most. Elliott wasn't just doubting her link to the genre in her eyes. He wasn't sure about her because she wasn't man, American, or tough like most women. Okay, to be fair, Elliott's anger seemed less about gender and more about what he thought was a lack of being real. He sees the West as a real place with a real past and a real feel. He also thought that The Power of the Dog, with its dark performances and slow-building emotional drama, didn't have the rough-and-tumble spirit that he thinks makes a true Western. Some people didn't agree with each other. It was a full-on clash of cultures. It's not between a man and a woman or an actor and a producer. It's between two art ideas. On the one hand, there's the standard cowboy who wants things to be simple and realistic. The modern speaker, on the other hand, tells stories with many layers, new perspectives, and emotional depth. Both are partly right in the end. Sam Elliott fights for a reputation that he has worked for decades to build. While Jane Campion pushes the limits of the genre, she brings new voices, stories, and points of view to an old territory. But this is clear. The Dog's strength did exactly what strong art is supposed to do. It got people talking, broke down long-held beliefs, and made even the genre's leaders think about what the West really means. And the Western keeps changing, even if not everyone goes along with it. It lives in that gray area between memory and imagination, between grit and grace. Jane Campion wasn't the only person Elliott hurt. The other one was also a star. Let us find out what happened and who it was. 5th, we have Benedict Cumberbatch. Sam Elliott also brought up Benedict Cumberbatch when he spoke badly about Jane Campion and her movie The Power of the Dog. While Sam did watch the movie, it was anything but moving for him. He thought it was almost insulting. Sam Elliott isn't like most movie critics. He's become a live symbol of the American frontier thanks to his famous mustache, gruff voice, and decades of work in westerns. People listen to Sam when he talks about horses, ranch life, or the spirit of the Wild West. So when he went on a show and ripped into the Dog's power, the The response was quick and strong. He didn't lie about anything. From the beginning, Sam made fun of the movie's direction and main idea. But when he set his sights on the movie's lead, British star Benedict Cumberbatch, he really got angry. Sam asked, "What the hell does this Brit know about the American West?" He meant it, and his voice was choked with anger. It was a very sharp shot. He thought Cumberbatch's performance as a tough, emotionally complicated cowboy was more like a stage play than a real person. Not only was he criticizing acting, he was standing up for a culture. Sam went even further. He talked about Cumberbatch's speech, body language, and everything else, saying it was over-the-top, theatrical, and not at all like life on a real ranch. Elliott says that life on a ranch isn't full of longing looks and whispered conversations. It's not about stylized pain or artistic symbolism, it's about hard work, quiet endurance, and people who have been changed by dust, sweat, and being alone. Film reviewers and fans quickly spoke out against the movie. People who liked the movie, including many from the younger generation of movie fans, said Elliott's ideas were out of date and closed-minded. Some people said he was stuck in the past and an old farmer who couldn't handle change. They said he was a gatekeeper who wouldn't let men show their manhood in new vulnerable ways or accept that Westerners could change from what they usually are. But Sam didn't move, even if he heard the noise. He didn't say sorry. He didn't change what he said. He even went even further. Elliott didn't see his words as a threat. They were a defense of the Western genre that he had spent most of his time writing. He thought that The Dog's Power was more than just a new take on the cowboy story. It changed it into something he couldn't recognize and thought wasn't telling the truth. The anger in Sam's heart came from a strong belief. He thought Westerns weren't supposed to be emotional or mental problems with cowboy hats on top of them. The stories were about tough people who emerged from hard environments without giving up. He thought Cumberbatch's acting not only didn't get this legacy right, it did it wrong. It wasn't personal, but it was very angry. Like everyone thought he would, Benedict Cumberbatch never replied directly. He kept a respectful silence which may have been suggested to him by producers or his own gut feelings. But people who were involved with the show later said they could see the review had an effect on it. Executives talked about whether to respond openly behind closed doors. Some people were afraid that talking to Elliott would make the story more interesting. Some people wanted to protect their star. Silence won in the end. It was official that nothing else was said. But Sam had said enough for both of them. He drew a line in the sand between himself and one movie, but also between two worlds and two ways of telling stories. One based on custom toughness and feelings that aren't spoken. The other in terms of meaning, self-reflection, and emotional depth. People were upset by what he said because it wasn't just about playing. They had to do with values. Some people thought he was mean and not ready to change. Others saw him as a rare voice that stood firm in a world that was always trying to come up with new ideas. Sam Elliott told everyone, love him or hate him, that not all stories should be retold without respecting their roots. After the dust cleared, the argument about The Dog's Power kept going around in the movie world. But Sam, he rode off into the sunset, so to speak, after telling the truth, just like the cowboys he's played for decades. It wasn't out of fear, sorrow, or apology that he did it. It turned out that Sam Elliott's harsh review wasn't just about one movie or character. It was about remembering the past without changing it so much that it is no longer recognizable. One thing is certain, you either agree with him or not. It's hard not to listen when Sam Elliott talks about the West. Here is another star that Sam Elliott doesn't like, a cowboy that he can't stand. What does he look like? Why is he on his list of stars he hates? Let's get into the specifics. Fourth place goes to Kevin Costner. Sam Elliott does more than just play cowboys. He is one. Without ever having been to Hollywood or even sitting in a makeup chair, Sam had already been shaped by the hard work of everyday life in the West. He didn't learn how to be tough. He became tough by going through life. Under a hot sun with real farmers whose hands were hurt from hard work. That pair of boots wasn't a fake. It looked like you walked through dust, not a red carpet because they were old and dirty. Sam's link to the West wasn't planned. He grew up with cattle, dirt roads, and rough hands. It was passed down, taken in, and lived. His voice was deep, gruff, and slow. It sounded like the wind blowing through a canyon or the creak of old horse leather. People didn't just hear what he said, they felt it. It wasn't a show. It was true. Sam couldn't help but think something was wrong when Hollywood started making shiny new westerns with pretty cowboys. The whole world cheered when Kevin Costner became the new cowboy king, thanks to movies like Wyatt Earp and TV shows like Yellowstone. Sam didn't clap though. He writhed. It wasn't about them. Sam didn't dislike Kevin Costner, but he didn't like what he saw on TV. Costner looked more like a man dressed for a rodeo to Sam than like someone he knew. He acts like a cowboy like it's Halloween. Sam is said to have told a friend. He thought that Costner's rough charm on screen was just that, charm. It wasn't something that was won by living it for a long time. It was polished, commercial, and made for cameras. People who saw Yellowstone felt like it was real, powerful, and gripping. But Sam thought it was all too perfect and staged.
The feelings were too strong, and the cowboy hats were too clean. In Yellowstone, the West looked more like a style statement than a history. It was hard for Sam to watch. Not since it wasn't cool, but since it wasn't true. Sam didn't say anything because he wasn't impressed by the show's huge popularity. Millions of loyal fans, high ratings and position as a pop culture icon. He saw melodrama and marketing where other people saw power battles and poetic justice. He thought the show made a place and way of life look better than they really were. The West was never pretty. It hurt, was dirty, was cold, and was full of quiet sacrifices that weren't celebrated. In fact, the people who made Yellowstone once tried to get Sam to appear in a small role. They wanted that clear voice, that stern presence and his spirit to make their world seem more real. But Sam said no. Not because they are proud or mean. No, he said. He loved the West because it was more than just beauty. It was a holy rule, respect, loyalty, and endurance. That wasn't what Yellowstone was protecting to him. It was being repacked. He once said, "It's not a Western. Dress-up drama with cowboy hats." Legends like Sam are sometimes asked to help new stars get more attention in Hollywood, where nostalgia is sold by the pound. But whenever Sam and Costner were together, like at award shows or business events, it got cold. Whenever they're in the same room, the temperature drops 10 degrees, joked someone in the know. They never insulted each other, got into public fights, or argued heatedly, but their silence spoke louder than any quote. Sam's sharp look said it all. People weren't being proud when they said, "You might act the part, but I've lived it." It wasn't a fight over pride. Sam Elliott didn't see himself as a cowboy. It was a weight of truth. A reminder that the American West wasn't made up of beautiful scenery and carefully planned dramas. It was made up of sleepless nights, silent bravery, never-ending suffering, and a strong connection to the land. The Western is just a genre to most performers. Sam sees it as a memory, a purpose, and a way to stay moral. He won't let that heritage be watered down, made more glamorous, or sold like a product. He doesn't just see the West as a place to film, he sees it as his holy duty to do so. And that's why Sam Elliott is still a rare breed today. He did more than just put on the hat. He earned every bit of dust on it. When actors do something wrong, Sam Elliott seems to get very angry. Let's look into the facts of another actor who took a cheap shot at the craft and made Elliott mad. Third place goes to Ashton Kutcher. It's more than a job for Sam Elliott. It's not just about walking the red carpet, making a lot of money, and having people yell your name. For him, it's a sacred skill that requires truth, humility, and being honest about how you feel. In Sam's world, acting is a calling. For this kind of art, you have to take off all your clothes, go deep inside and give something real. Anything less than that is not only rude, it's also lazy. That's why Sam wasn't just skeptical when Ashton Kutcher stomped into Hollywood, full of youthful energy, charming goofiness, and ideas for a tech company. He felt let down, and maybe even hurt. Many people thought Kutcher was the coolest kid in show business in the early 2000s. From his big break in That 70s Show, to starring in rom-coms and helping to start tech companies, he had everything the business seemed to love: charm, self-assurance, and a huge fan group. But Elliott didn't see those things as a sign of actor. They got fame right. People thought that the two would get along when they were cast together in The Ranch, a Netflix show that mixes comedy and drama. But people who were there say it sounded more like two people speaking two different languages. People who were on set remember the stress, even though Sam didn't say he didn't want to work with Kutcher. Everything was professional. He was always on time, said his lines, and treated the work with care. But the air felt cold. One crew worker said that it was too quiet on set when they were both there. One staff member said Sam once told them he's a nice guy but not a real actor. Ashton wasn't just another co-star to Sam Elliott. He stood for everything he thought was wrong with Hollywood. Sam thought that current Hollywood was too focused on looks and fame, and that image was more important than the truth. Where were the artists who gave their all for their parts? Who looked into the craft, cared about its past, and understood how important it was? Kutcher's easy smile and business deals off-screen made him look like he came from a system that had traded grit for shine. Elliott thought that he should show up with his whole self. He thought Kutcher, on the other hand, came with a well-managed brand. Fans were surprised by how well the two played off of each other on screen, even though they were far apart off-screen. The characters got along and had energy. In public interviews, Kutcher even said nice things about Sam, naming him a mentor and praising his experience. Some people who knew Sam well thought it was just another show, a good one but nothing more. People said he would say things like, "He's acting like a guy who learned how to act on YouTube." That comment is sharp. It's not just a criticism of how Kutcher does things. It is a sad song about Elliott. It had nothing to do with Kutcher as a person. Most people he talked to said he was nice, respectful, and easygoing. That wasn't enough, though. The trouble wasn't how Kutcher behaved. That's what he stood for. Sam Elliott grew up in a different kind of movie land. A place where actors worked hard at their jobs and struggled with their parts. A place where a good performance was earned, not made up. He longed for the days when players took care of the stage before they ever touched a camera. He thought that you didn't learn how to act as you went along. They were things you learned, things you felt, and most importantly, things you lived. For him, Kutcher stood for the quick-fix society, the viral fame, and the overnight success. Sam saw a man who had become famous too quickly and failed to back it up with real life or emotional depth. It's important to remember that not everyone agreed with Sam. A lot of fans loved The Ranch and how the older, more rugged Elliott and the younger, more modern Kutcher interacted with each other. The show's balance of humor and heart was praised by critics, but Sam wasn't touched. He took pride in the work he was hired to do. He didn't see much of what was going on behind the scenes. A greater question lies at the heart of it all, and Sam Elliott seems to be wrestling with it in silence. Where did the soul of acting go? In this age of celebrities, social media, and fame based on algorithms, has the craft lost its center? Or is there still room for the kind of truth that used to make artists stars? They taught them how to tell stories. Elliott didn't think Kutcher was the next big thing in acting. He made him think about how the business he used to love had changed, and maybe not for the better. They didn't cause any public trouble during their time on the ranch in the end. Two very different men kept their professional distance from each other. There were no big fights or leaked texts. One was formed by old-school rules, and the other by the new fame rules. For those who paid close attention, the real story wasn't in the lines they said on film. It was when they were alone and quiet, the gap that couldn't be seen between tradition and modernity, between respect and creativity, between a man who thought acting was holy and someone who, in Sam's eyes, just saw it as another job.
Aside from that, Sam Elliott get mad at him. Let's get into the specifics. Second, Nicolas Cage. Sam Elliott doesn't have to yell to be understood. He doesn't even raise his voice very often, but when he talks it sounds like every word was picked with care and has history and meaning. It's his acting style that silence can say more than 1,000 words. A crowd can feel something deep with just one look from Sam. He thinks that less is always better. Then there's Nick Cage. When it comes to fire, Cage is like a calm, steady fire. It is loud, bright, and hard to miss. He's crazy, unexpected, and full of energy that jumps off the screen. Cage doesn't just show up in a scene. He charges in and turns it over a lot of the time. There is a huge difference between the two. They were both in 2007's Ghost Rider, but they could have been from different worlds. Someone said, if Sam Elliott's style is a quiet storm, Nicolas Cage is a tornado. That's a great way to describe him. Sam thinks it's best to hold back. His art is in the silences, the small gestures, and the things that aren't said. He slowly brings you into the world of his character, which makes you lean in and listen. He doesn't believe in making people feel things. He thinks you should earn it. On the other hand, Cage likes chaos. He jumps right into parts and isn't afraid to be loud, strange, or big. Some people think he's brilliant and not afraid of anything. Sam, on the other hand, thought all that energy was noise that was annoying and pointless. There was no doubt that Cage was talented. Sam thought it wasn't honest. Sam was his normal, calm, polite, and professional self while Ghost Rider was being filmed. But people who were close to the set saw something strange. He and Cage never really got along. They didn't talk much, do anything together in between takes, or become friends. One team member said that Sam was nice to everyone. It was different with Cage, though. You could tell how far away it was. Sam would drop hints in later conversations. He would never say who they were, but it was always clear what he meant. He talked about players who take over scenes or make movies too much like a circus. He would talk about a style of acting that lacked soul. And even though he never said Cage's name, everyone who knew him knew who he was talking about. A friend said that Sam once told them he's more firework than flame, loud and flashy but no warmth, a big bang with no lasting heat. Not only was there criticism but also sadness. Sam wasn't mad, he was disappointed because to him, acting is holy. It's about finding the truth, not shocking people into paying attention. Meanwhile, Cage kept doing what he does best, making people disagree, winning awards, and becoming a pop culture icon. His roles were often controversial, but they were never dull. That wasn't important to Sam Elliott, though. Awards and fame didn't mean much if they weren't based on something real. What bothered Sam the most wasn't the noise or the chaos, it was the loss of truth. He thought that the best performances didn't shout, they whisper, they exploded, they simmered. For him, acting wasn't about being seen, it was about being felt. Today, flashy is often more important than subtle, but Sam Elliott is still a unique kind of actor. He hasn't changed or followed trends. While Cage runs through the storm, Sam stays rooted, steady, and burning quietly, believing that honesty, not noise, is what makes a role memorable. The last person on the list used to be Sam Elliott's friend but turned away over time. Let's look at the details of Sam's friendship that ended. First, there's Jeff Bridges. Some names don't hurt because of anger or betrayal, but because of grief. For Sam Elliott, Jeff Bridges is one of those names. The two men used to be close, like brothers. It wasn't the kind that was made for cameras or headlines, red carpets, or loud declarations of friendship. Instead, it was something deeper. They were both from the same old school, humble, grounded, and dedicated to acting more than being seen. When they worked together in The Big Lebowski, people saw chemistry, charm, and skill. But what they didn't see was what was going on behind the scenes. Two men who shared values and the belief that it was enough to show up, do the work well, and leave with grace. They had long conversations about humility and purpose because they were both sick of Hollywood's focus on glitz. They liked plain boots more than fancy shoes, quiet sets over flashing lights, and honesty over fame. Sam and Jeff were cowboys at heart, lost in a town that was crazy about noise and attention. For a while it looked like they'd live out their lives together, unaltered and worry-free. Then Crazy Heart happened. The performance that Jeff Bridges gave captivated the world. It was honest, vulnerable, and unforgettable. He won the Oscar, and deservedly so. On the outside, no one clapped harder than Sam. But then something changed. Suddenly Jeff was everywhere. He was on the covers of high-end magazines, posing in tailored suits, and giving strong opinions at major award shows. He had changed, or maybe shown a different side of himself. The man who used to like staying out of the way was now stepping into the spotlight, fully lit. He was sure of himself, well-groomed, and becoming more political, not in the quiet backroom way Sam liked, but in the full glare of press interviews and national TV. To many, it was growth, the natural evolution of a beloved actor finally getting his due. But for Sam, it was like seeing an old friend slowly change into someone he didn't recognize. It wasn't the success itself that hurt him, it was what came with it. The unspoken bond they'd had, built on staying true to the craft, started to feel like an artifact. The authenticity they both used to protect so fiercely seemed to be melting in the heat of fame. It was even worse that Jeff seemed to be happy in it. The man who used to mumble lines over coffee and watch silent sunrises with them on set was now a symbol of everything they had stood against in private. The art was still there, but the humility and shared understanding were going away. Sam never attacked Jeff in public. He didn't write angry op-eds or interviews full of anger. Instead, when asked about the actors who had meant the most to him, he said some people change, others just show who they always were. He didn't need to say anything else. There was no dramatic breakup, no yelling match, and no news stories screaming betrayal. There was just silence. That silence lasted for years, until the calls and projects stopped. The friendship, the steady, quiet cowboy bond fell apart. For Sam, that silence hurt more than any fight could have. A fight would have ended, but silence hurts that way. It creeps up on you in old memories, visits you in quiet times, and stays with you in the roles they'll never play together again. It's sad to lose a friend in a storm, but it's even worse to lose one in the sun, when everything seems to be going well. That kind of loss doesn't make a fuss, it just lingers. That's why Sam Elliott might smile when he talks about his past or is asked about his most important partnership. He might even laugh. But there's one name, he says softly, if at all. He doesn't mean to hurt you, but it still hurts. Their friendship didn't end in a flash of anger. It died slowly, undone by time, success, and the choices people make when the spotlight shines on them. That may be the most painful ending of all, one that doesn't leave scars but only shadows. What do you think about Sam Elliott's list of stars he hates? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.